Today is a big day. The NextGEN broadcast has received its first ever review code from a developer, with the likes of Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Ninja Gaiden Master Collection and Scarlet Nexus out this month. This is an exciting time. The game? Boris the Rocket. Welcome to the broadcast, my name is Naj and this is my review of Boris the Rocket. On a serious note, I would like to thank Tor Studios for providing the code for this review. It is very much appreciated and you will always be my first. If you're watching, thanks. I'm not usually one for simulator games. I find them tedious, boring, and simply I do not have the patience for them. But I like to approach all things in life with an open mind. Sometimes that can be a pretty dangerous code to live by, but I thought, hell, why not? Taking on the simulation of a Russian prisoner who drinks vodka and is tasked with protecting the Motherland from enemy missiles does kind of sound like fun. And yeah, I'm kind of glad I did because Boris the Rocket, to my surprise, is a pretty fun game. For a while. And if anything, it is kind of addictive. For a time. But I'm afraid to say it ultimately crumbles under the weight of its own ambitions as the game's greatest strengths soon become its greatest weaknesses, transforming this enjoyable game of memory and management into a game of frustration due to its stingy time constraints and lack of player freedom.
Awesome! Could have been better if I brought it outside.
You play as Boris, who is not a rocket, but a Russian fellow who is apprehended by the KGB and found guilty of making jokes and mocking the great nation. So, naturally, he is given the choice of either death or labour in operating a missile silo used to defend the Motherland against incoming enemy missiles. After some thought and a little persuasion, he opts in for the role, thus begins our adventure. Dr. Boris, or How I Started Drinking and Forgot the Bomb. Boris the Rocket isn't a deeply complex story-driven AAA title, nor is it really a very unique indie standout title. But you probably already know this. I mean, you wouldn't go to McDonald's and expect to be given a Michelin-star winning gourmet burger now, would you? The presentation of the game is okay, especially for a very small indie developer. The graphics aren't anything to write home about, but it doesn't really matter in this style of game and it looks good enough. The music, however, is great, as is the voice acting of Boris. Very Russian, obviously, in its delivery. The music especially is a constant reminder of the urgency you're under, and I liked it a lot, playing a kind of Soviet marching anthem. And Boris is funny and a likeable character when he speaks. Almost that you can sympathise with him in his situation, and he's just a regular guy who's got caught up in this role. It's pretty funny stuff.
And I am just as cold as iceberg in the ocean.
Played in a first-person perspective, you are put straight into the silo where you'll have to manage the loading and launching of missiles to annihilate the incoming missiles, survive the harsh wilderness on the outskirts, and care for your base by ensuring you have enough resources to complete your objective and by upgrading the base's functionality. The game starts pretty simple by having you locating the incoming rockets with your radar, setting up the missile by arming them and launching, rinse and repeat. This is the game's primary goal, and as the days progress, the harder and more complex this task becomes. Somehow, somewhere, I guess whilst you are sleeping, someone comes in and advances the equipment by adding more functionality to the missile launching hardware, demanding more specific requirements from the player on each launch. Incoming missiles will soon be different colours, different shapes, different speeds and distances, and all of these attributes have to be taken into consideration when firing back, and one detail overlooked will cause you to miss wasting a rocket and allowing it to be that bit closer to impending doom. An example. A red rocket with spoilers going over 400 on the speedometer but is over a certain altitude will require you to add coolant, turn on a heat seeker, find its radio frequency, and fire hoping you haven't forgotten anything. It's very much like going to the supermarket when your wife asked you if you wanted a written list, but you insisted your memory is just as it was 10 years ago, and she knows full well you're bound to forget that one vital ingredient for the stroganoff. I soon realised this is what Boris the Rocket is at its core concept. A memory game that requires you to remember an increasingly large list of demands against the clock. For me, the sense of urgency is what gives Boris the Rocket its appeal and enjoyment, and the ongoing additions to the evolving list of conditions helps keep the repetitive nature somewhat fresh.
What does that mean? If targets were greater altitude of 1,000 meters, it must be...
In the moment, it can get pretty tense as you struggle to remember what settings are needed to succeed, especially when multiple missiles are approaching. If you forget what does what, all of the details are in the journal which you can refer to at any time, but the longer you take reminding yourself, the closer the rockets will come, and there were a few instances in which I hesitated which brought on the destruction of Mother Russia quicker than a Russo-Japanese war. But never mind the homing missiles, time is your biggest enemy and this works for and against the game, and this is where the problems with it start to arise. Each level in the game is a shift at the silo, each with its own time limit, which is not very long at all, which means I was very limited as to what I could achieve in a day. Every few days the time limit does get a little bit longer, but that doesn't necessarily give you more time to complete chores between rockets, because there will be more rockets with more requirements, meaning more room for error. With the constant rockets coming in, you will find yourself eventually frustrated as you want to progress the story and your base, but you are constantly held back by the constant need to attend the rockets and the very tight time constraints on each level. There are many chores to do around the office in which even Mary Poppins herself would struggle to get through without actually sticking a rocket smothered in sugar up her bunker. You have to regularly leave the bunker to ensure it runs efficiently. There are 3 main areas you can access outside. A mine, which generates materials used to upgrade aspects of the base or craft materials. There is an anti-ballistic missile storage bunker, where you can craft more missiles to launch. And finally, the ballistic missile production silo, in which over the course of the game, you are developing a large missile by contributing resources to it. This is the main drive of the game outside of the primary missile defense, as you slowly progress the development. But one problem I had with this development of it is it's just so slow, to the point where I was losing interest, and this isn't helped by the lack of time you are given, restricting the time you can dedicate to this missile's production. I found myself completing 1 or maybe 2 chores at a push on each day because I was constantly pulled back to the main silo to shoot down missiles, and before I knew it, the day was over. You can use resources to upgrade your base, such as bigger resource bags and various autocomplete settings on the missiles to help with the speed of it all, the more complex it gets. But these cost a lot of resources, and to upgrade them, you have to go back and forth from the mine carrying only 1 bag of resources at a time. You are not given enough time to develop your base at a steady pace. There are some moments in which it will go a weird amount of time without a missile coming to allow you to explore, giving you the freedom to complete what you want within the base. But these moments are rare, but they were enjoyable. But I was constantly resolving a missile crisis issue to get to the door to leave, to then be pulled straight back in due to another missile. It can be very annoying after a couple of hours with the game, as the true progression has to come to a standstill. In addition to this, you have to make sure you have enough rockets in the storage to defend the base, complete the story objectives, which is basically preparing the big missile, and the objectives look like they have been translated poorly from Russian. I mean, look at this.
The key from supplies which stuck on the cliff. The key from supplies which stuck on the cliff.
Your character does level up, in which you acquire skill points to use to upgrade Boris's abilities, which do help in the exploration, things like increased movement speed, increased stamina, and the less time it takes for you to freeze to death outside. But as you upgrade, so do the number of missiles and requirements, making the upgrade somewhat redundant because you're still restricted to being in the base, because missiles are constantly coming and going, again, not allowing you to actually get things done. When you do eventually get to go outside, you can put on a coat which reduces the freeze effect, however it also slows down your movement. And to be honest, even as the temperature drops outside and it changes from level to level, I ended up discovering it was easier to just go out there without a coat, as you are faster, and none of the inside areas are far enough away from each other for you to worry about freezing. Another obstacle in your way outside is a great big bear trying to eat you, but he is pretty avoidable. I mean, you can pretty much run away from him with no problem, or just throw a bottle of vodka at him to, knock him out and have your way with him.
bitch.
Boris the Bonker is a big juggle between all of these tasks, which kind of had a strange effect on me as a player. It is addictive for a time and can be pleasantly panic-inducing when things get tricky, but by constantly keeping you on a leash, it also shoots itself in the foot, because more times than not, you will just feel like a fat child in a pushchair old enough to run, but mummy won't let you out, making this game for me a massive missed opportunity. I'll tell you what, for Boris the Rocket 2, if there ever will be one, this game would have been perfect for co-op. One thing the game does actually do well is it gives you the sense of isolation, that you really are the only one who can save the land. So a co-op mode may take away from the sense of isolation, but I think in the long run it would have helped with the longevity of the game. Think something like Overcooked, a game in which you have to work as a team to prepare the meals, but in this case, Overnuked, working together to protect the Motherland. There you go, I even gave you a title. You could argue this would make the game too easy, as one player could just stand around destroying missiles while the other player upgrades the base and completes all of the other chores, but put something in to challenge the two players. This is a prison sentence after all, chores need to be done, so punish players in some way if they are just standing around doing nothing. This would then force both players to constantly be doing something, taking away the exploits of having multiple players in this style of game. I've played Boris the Rocket for about 4 hours, and I would say my time with the game has come to an end, which is disappointing as the game is some light-hearted fun and gives moments of achievement when you are doing it all right. But it is hard to truly recommend the game, as I found too many of its mechanics were working against me and impacting the enjoyment of the game. And I kind of get this is the whole point, the urgency of it and rushing around, and people who really enjoy simulator games will probably find some enjoyment out of this. I mean, I did, and I'm not really a fan of the genre, so you could probably take that as something, but overall, a huge missed opportunity. But that was all just my opinion. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the game. Did you think it was too restrictive, or did you enjoy that side of it? If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down, and subscribe to the channel for more